Welcome back to What Makes You Tick Best Bits. Hiring a CRO is one of the hardest decisions and most pivotal decisions in any startup's lifespan. But how can you make sure you get that decision right when it's so easy to get it wrong? There is a few options available to you. Do you need a full-time CRO right away? Are you better starting off with a fractional or an interim? How do you get that decision right? How do you look at what you've got today to work out what the right thing for your business is moving forward? How do you run the process? What should they bring to the table? How do we make sure we get the alignment between sales and marketing right up front so that we can deliver value as a business? All of these things come from lived experience. So I've brought one of my favorite people in the world, Grant Richardson, a brilliant CEO and a stalwart interim and fractional revenue leader, onto the pod to answer some of those questions for you. So if you're thinking about hiring a CRO, don't do it until you watch this. Enjoy. What would you say would be some of those considerations and questions that they might ask themselves to determine which model they might go and find the person who's best to deliver it would be?
I think they would have to ask themselves what capability they had in their team. So I think they'd have to take a long, hard look at the sales and marketing capability within their organization. So that's going to be a key consideration. Because if they have high potential but inexperienced sales and marketing leadership, fractional might work, or a short interim, then fractional, and then someone in the team may be able to step up in 18 months, 2 years to become the CRO, then that might work for them. And the other thing is, I guess they need to look at what their investment plan is. If it's likely, depending on whereabouts in the growth journey the business is, it's likely, I would suggest, that an investment-backed business is probably going to have to pay more than they can afford out of cash flow to be able to bring in an experienced interim CRO. Probably the way it is. So they have to view it as an investment as opposed to an operational cost. And it's up to the CRO to demonstrate the value they're going to bring. So they're going to have to articulate, here's what I'm going to do in 3 to 6 months. Here's quantitatively what I'm going to deliver. Here's qualitatively what I'm going to deliver in terms of reorg or whatever it might be. So I think they probably have two key questions. What's the capability that we have in our team, in our retained on the books team? And are we able and willing to invest beyond cash flow to be able to bring in a CRO that's going to get us from point A to point B? And are we clear on what that point B looks like? I think those are probably the key questions. If I were
it makes sense.
That's what I'd ask myself.
That's a good way of thinking about it, right? I think another interesting thing that you've said is you would see it as part of your responsibility to demonstrate that value. So if someone's in between the two and they're going, look, we don't really have the budget, but maybe if this is an investment, would you see it then as your responsibility to help to build the business case that would demonstrate the ROI of having you on an interim basis? On how much of that would fall with them?
If I had the opportunity, and those are the kinds of conversations that I have had in advance of taking an interim role, quite a lot of the time, those kind of discussions have been had before they even go to market, before they even go to the market to bring somebody in. So before they brief a recruiter or warm up their network, generally those are the kind of conversations that have already been had. But in the interview process for the roles, then I do see it as my responsibility to share where I think they can go. It's part of the gig, right? And you have to say, I understand your market space. I understand where you are right now in your growth journey. Here's where I think the key, from what you've told me and what I've researched, here's what I think are the key areas that need focus. However, in the first 2 weeks, we can agree if that's correct or not. But absolutely. Yeah. A lot of those conversations would be had before a candidate gets even spoken to.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'll sanity check if that thinking's right. It's the same in our world. We often get told this is what we're looking for. But when you really take the time to unpack the impact that they're looking to achieve, often the solution is quite different than what they've gone to market for. But that's half of the value of partnering with an expert, right? Is that you can get sensible advice around what's the right way to get to the outcome, even if that is a bit of brutal truth feedback on their side that it might be the incorrect brief.
it's difficult. It must be difficult for investors or businesses recruiting for this type of role, because they have to accept that part of the reason they're recruiting is to answer some of the questions they don't have the answers to. As a recruiter, you must feel that as well. If you're not quite sure exactly what's required and you're talking to candidates, it makes it's a slightly a leap of faith once you make a call on it. You have to say, okay, the person's a fit. We think culturally they'll fit the organization. We think they get it. We think they understand where we're at. And we think they'll help us to answer the questions in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to define what the plan looks like for that 3 to 6 months. Because in any business, 3 to 6 months isn't really a long time. And interim can become 9 months. And even that, particularly, as you will know, in the recruitment world, when you're recruiting for senior execs, if someone comes into an interim role to hit the ground running, immediately take control and direction of the sales and marketing function, whilst a recruitment project's going on in the background, it might be 6 months before they find the permanent candidate. And then it might be 3 months before they start. So there you've burned your 9 months with your interim CRO already. It's not a long period of time. So I think there's a bit of do your diligence from both sides, for the candidate and for the recruiters. Do your diligence. You just have to find someone you think is a fit and have some confidence and trust in what they've said, that they can come in and help you work out what needs done. Now, that's a difficult position to be in. I'm very cognizant of that when I'm talking to potential clients.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. Yeah, I think people often underbat the amount of time it's going to take, but you're absolutely right. We've touched on hiring there, and obviously we've talked about budgets. And if you look at like the kind of project management triangle, we've got time, money, and risk. So if we talk about the challenges and risks that people might make when they're hiring a CRO, could you talk us through what are the most common challenges and risks that someone might face in that CRO hiring process, and of course, how best they might overcome them?
So challenges and risks in the process or in the selection, or what do you mean specifically?
Yeah, exactly. The hiring process. It could be, we've talked about which is the right model based on where they're at, but what are some of the best ways that they can overcome the most common challenges and risks in hiring a CRO?
Okay. I think looking for evidence that if it's an interim role, looking for evidence that interim CRO is comfortable operating as part of the team and not as a consultant. I think, as we talked about previously, it's not just a consulting and planning and strategic review type role. It has to be someone who's got a long track record or a successful track record, I think, as being an employee, and then have moved into this interim role because, for all the reasons we've discussed previously. So I think not just looking for the functional experience and the functional fit and the knowledge and market knowledge and all of that. I think a sense that they are able to integrate with and become part of a business very quickly. Because as we said, even if it was 9 months, which is at the sort of upper end of an interim contract duration, it's not a long period of time. And if it's someone that takes 3 or 4 months to get their head around the business and integrate with the team, you're getting on for halfway through the engagement already if it's about a 9-month gig. So I think being very diligent around understanding that this person is used to operating within a business as an employee. They just happen to have chosen to become an intern. I think that would be one part. I think some of the other challenges are around, I think, accepting the unknowns, accepting that you will not necessarily know all of the things that you want them to do when they land. Accepting that, I think, is important. And so recruiting not just based on their ability to do, but their ability to think and answer questions and work out quickly what the important buttons are to push and all that type of stuff. So I think that would be, I think those would be two key ones: the ability to integrate and operate as if they were an employee very quickly, and the ability to come in and quickly diagnose what needs done, agree the plan, and then just get their foot down and get on with it.
Yeah,
Does that
makes
make
perfect
sense?
sense. And if we talk about, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. And if we talk about de-risking, So how are the ways that you've seen businesses de-risk their decision? Obviously, there's different risks in terms of full-time, fractional, and interim. What ways have you seen people de-risking that decision?
Short notice periods are fairly brutal way of de-risking the recruitment. Seen that a few times. I don't know. What do you think of that? Because as I say, I'm just overtly pragmatic, but I'm not sure. Certainly, from an interim and fractional point of view, I'm not sure how much you can de-risk it. You have to have a diligent process. You have to be clear on the cultural fit. You have to have a very good idea of what your market opportunity is. So you have to have all of those things in mind. But I'm not sure what specifically, apart from what we've discussed already, they could do to de-risk the decision. I'm not trying to evade the question. I'm just trying to think through what might be.
No. Maybe it is in itself de-risking, right? Because if you're bringing in someone on a fractional or interim basis, it is almost like a try before you buy.
Yeah.
So it does do it. And if you're using the recruitment process to see how they would do things like producing business places, business cases, showing how they would integrate throughout the team, what their approach would be, their track record, they're bringing evidence. And if you're having to force them to bring evidence, it's probably a big red flag. Whereas if they're the ones going, here are some of the risks, here are the questions, and you learn through the process before you've even started engaging properly, things that you didn't know before, that's really a great sign that they're a right fit.
No, I think you're spot on. I think in a way, and to an extent, bringing in an interim kind of de-risks the full-time employee recruitment, right? Help to define exactly what you want, see what fits and what doesn't. Even if someone comes in and they don't fit, well, then at least you know why. So I think the interim approach is part of a de-risk strategy for before you go and bring an FTE in. And the same, to an extent, possibly for fractional, with the added benefit with fractional that there's a cost saving. You can spend a bit less money. You could try a few different fractionals over a period and help them. They can help you to come to the answer of what you need permanently. Yeah, I'm not sure I've answered that particularly well for you, but I just think maybe I would say this, but for anyone recruiting interim or fractional CRO, there's always a level of risk in any recruitment, right?
Sure.
And things like diligent referencing.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot. I've experienced that a lot in terms of interim, which particularly with private equity and investment-backed businesses that have investors that they have to satisfy. I think that's the usual things that you would do for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're not buying a product; it's people. So there's risk on both sides. So I think understanding that it's a really good process for someone like you because you don't have to fully commit to a full-time role. You can see if you work with people well, and if you can help to move the needle and you can help to make the sort of impact that you can do before you go and take that leap.
I mean, sorry, I was about to answer a question you hadn't asked me. Is that all right?
Yes. Yeah, go for it. You're preempting. I love it.
I don't know why this sprung to mind, but one of the challenges I find, and this was especially true in my last interim role, because I go all in, interim or fractional, I actually found it really tough to walk away from the last role because I heavily invested in it emotionally and wanted it to work and put a lot of time and effort, missing Bournemouth Beach in the process. It was tough. It was tough when that came to an end. So I guess I'm reflecting slightly on your question about is it interim or fractional you prefer. The benefit of fractional is when you can do fractional for a much longer period, is my experience. You could do 2 or 3 different roles for 18 months, maybe a bit more, 2 years. Sometimes I know people that have been doing fractional roles for businesses on and off for numbers of years. So you're part of the team, part of the business. Interim can't be like that. It just, once you get beyond 6-9 months, I think you're getting to the point where you're going to start overstaying your welcome. So that would be an unexpected for me downside is 6 or 9 months of working my ass off for something that I joined because I believe they've got an opportunity and I'm proud of what we've achieved and are continuing to achieve. Walking away from that's difficult. It's just difficult. And I found that tough with the last, especially with the last one.
Yeah, like we said, it's people, right? And you have emotions. And I think that emotions is what makes it powerful, that care and that ownership. And obviously you've integrated, right? In that last role, you integrated with the team in a certain way. And I suppose that's a really interesting point. Obviously, what you've talked about, not wanting it to end, is a great sign that it was good. What would you say are the potential challenges that people might face when they're integrating a new CRO, and how could they mitigate those challenges so that they do have that sort of emotional buy-in that they're looking for?
Do you mean an interim?
Just generally, in terms of bringing a CRO in, what would you say are the potential integration challenges that a business might face when bringing a CRO into the organization?
I think it depends on the nature of the business. Obviously, a SaaS business is different from a manufacturing business. But what I've seen, and I've seen this in corporate, and I've seen this with investment-backed businesses, a lack of integration with the operational capability of the business, or lack of understanding by the CRO of the operational capability of the business, excuse me, can cause big problems. It's not that often that the sales and marketing function drives so much demand that the operational part of the business can't keep up, but it does happen. It happened regularly. When I was with Agreco, we were growing massively year on year. And if that revenue and lead gen and opportunity creation part of the business becomes detached from the operational part of the business, I think you can start to see cracks appear. So that can be a challenge. It's a good problem to have, creating too much demand. I've also seen businesses where it's the opposite problem. But I think an acknowledgement of the role of the CRO by the board and at board level, whether it's full-time, interim, or fractional, I think that's important. And I think it is incumbent on the person, as I say, full-time, interim, or fractional, to make sure that they are clear with all the stakeholders what their role is, what their objectives are, what they're working towards, what their priorities are. And that's when you work in big corporates, stakeholder management becomes second nature. It's slightly political in corporates, but not so much in smaller businesses. But I think stakeholder management and communication, it sounds glib to say it, but you need to get those two right. Because even in launch and growth phase businesses, investment-backed businesses, there are a number of stakeholders with a number of competing priorities, and you need to make sure you're alive to those and managing them.
Yeah.
Because in an interim role, and again, I don't know what it says about me, but I like it, you're always on trial. And I joked about notice periods, but you're not going to get 3 months notice period if it's not working. It just doesn't happen. So you need to be all over your stakeholder management, all over your communications internally, and all over your numbers. It sounds, but you don't get much time. You don't get much time to prove yourself, and if it's going wrong, you don't get much time to turn it around. So you need to be all over those.
Yeah, sure.
And if that answered your question, that's the way a CRO needs to integrate with an organization.
Thank you for listening and watching this Best Bits short. If you like this, tune in next Sunday for our next special part of our favorite episodes. And if you love the main podcast, every Thursday we introduce you to a new virtual mentor so you can hear their career story and answers to the biggest questions in tech. See you on the next episode.